Here's how I 3D kitbashed a scrap mech. Big, stompy robots are cool, so I wanted to make one. It also just so happens I'm making an Ash Waste, Tallarn, Orlok looking army, and I'd love for them to have mechs instead of tanks. As always, the first part of every 3D kitbash is looking through your files and figuring out what you want to make. A little bit ago, the Maker's Cult and Gear Guts released this walker that I really wanted to use. I think one reason I don't like normal vehicles is that you can't see the people inside, so you lose a little character. I'm going to use this anti-air gun as the cockpit. Here's the professional concept art I drew for the build. You guys get nothing but the best. I first brought in the mech, then I brought in the anti-air body with the guy that came with it. I replaced the torso with a Reptilian Overlord's Desert Reaver torso, cutting off the old torso with the Boolean difference. Then I clipped in a new torso, brought in the arms, and added a visor. Then I started to pose the mech. This just takes a while and requires a ton of fine-tuning and looking at different angles and all that. And I've found it really helps if you bring in an object to give your model some context to pose around. I added different objects that made sense to me, like a big spotlight, a ladder on the back, and I made a little screen that the pilot can play games on or target an enemy. I was looking at the pilot and I was thinking he's a little boring. Also, 2 tractor steering wheels didn't quite make sense to me. I brought in a lever from another file and clipped it into the dashboard. I also brought in a pointing arm from some rovers and made the pilot point at something. I made the arm have a better transition with the body by going into sculpting mode and pulling the mesh around. I also made the sleeve fall more naturally. I supported the pilot, the main body, and each of the arms and printed them separately. The digital part of the kitbash was done. It all printed very well except for the main body. I must have forgotten some supports on the corner of the left shoulder plate, and instead of printing it again, I fixed it with some green stuff. I made a blob, flattened it, and smoothed it out as much as possible. Then I let it cure. Then I sanded it until it was relatively smooth. This is my first time trying to create an inorganic smooth surface, and I'm pleased with the result. And since it's a scrap mech, imperfections are a-okay. Supergluing the legs was sort of a nightmare. If you have any tips, I'd love to hear them. What ended up helping me was building up the base underneath to add support, and using little beads of green stuff to hold the pieces in place as the superglue did its thing. I also tried to use texture paste for an added level of support. I also used a block of wood to give it something to lean on. It felt pretty strong once everything was dried and cured. I don't know. I magnetized the weapon attachments with some flat, 1/4 inch N52 magnets. I use this little guardsman as a polarity key so everything I magnetize is consistent. There was a good art but not great game that came out a while ago called Biomutant, and it had a really cool mech in it that has a canopy to it, and I wanted to emulate that. I took some toothpicks and cut them to size and made a little frame. Then I rolled out thin lines of green stuff and used them as a wrap to add realism. The top supports weren't quite long enough, so I added some paper clips. We'll get to the fabric of the canopy later. I added some old screen door mesh to add some detail, as well as wires all around the place. I used green stuff, guitar string, and paper clips. I also added a green stuff wire going from the spotlight to the cockpit, and I also made a little green stuff button. It's the little details like that that end up being my favorite parts of builds. I added some stowage and a satellite dish to make it look more lived in. For the cloth canopy, I covered a bit of shop towel in some watered down Mod Podge, ripped it up a bit, and wrapped the back against the wooden pole. This is the same technique shown in my paper towel robes tutorial. I globbed some texture and crackle paste on the model to act as rust and add a little visual interest. And like that, the Kitbash is done. This is definitely one of my favorite things I've made. I painted the pilot, canopy, and mech separately. Here it is all painted. Alright, thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Comment down below with any feedback or suggestions. Alright, bye-bye.